Democratic lawmakers are demanding answers after touring Alligator Alcatraz, an immigration facility surrounded by alligators and pythons. I'm Scripps News' Liz Landers, and you're watching Morning Rush. Florida lawmakers who were allowed into the facility this weekend deep in the Everglades described the conditions as inhumane. Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz claims there are 32 detainees packed in each cell. She says each cage contains 3 small toilets with attached sinks, which detainees use for drinking water and to brush their teeth. She calls this situation very upsetting.
I came out of that detention camp and described exactly what I saw. I brought a thermostat in and measured the temperature, sweltering heat. We saw bugs, grasshoppers, the largest that I've ever seen, hopping along through the encampment.
Republicans on the same tour, however, say they saw nothing out of the sort at the Everglades facility. They tout it as a, quote, low-cost facility fortified by Mother Nature. President Trump is defending Attorney General Pam Bondi amid outcry from many of the MAGA faithful about the Justice Department's report on Jeffrey Epstein. A recently released DOJ memo said the accused sex offender was not murdered, nor did he leave a client list. The memo contradicts some of the conspiracy theories previously pushed by Trump and his top supporters, including far-right activist Laura Loomer and former Trump advisor Steve Bannon. Both have criticized Bondi's handling of the case. In Central Texas, the search continues today for more than 160 people after devastating floods wreaked havoc on the 4th of July weekend there. Showers and thunderstorms expected this afternoon may impact the search. Officials announced on Sunday that the overall death toll in the ongoing Texas flooding has risen to more than 130 killed. And right now, firefighters at the Grand Canyon are racing to contain 2 raging wildfires. This after they destroyed a historic lodge and closed a section of the park for the rest of the season. Scripps News business and tech correspondent Maura Barrett is live in Chicago tracking this. Maura, what is the latest on these fires?
Good morning, Liz. The fires really exploded over the weekend and expanded the region in which flames are attacking. There are 2 fires, if you take a look at this map, about 35 miles apart. The White Sage fire is the biggest one on the north side of the region, and that's ranging about 50,000 acres, whereas the southern fire, the Dragon Bravo fire, is nearly 6,000 acres. Now, suspected officials say that a lightning strike could have caused each of these fires, and because of the conditions that the Grand Canyon region has been facing in recent weeks in terms of really hot temperatures, dry conditions, low humidity, and really gusty winds. That's why we're seeing, especially that northern fire, the White Sage fire, spreading so quickly, and why it's increasingly hard for firefighters to tackle. Fire officials said that aerial bucket drops were conducted to slow fire movement over the weekend, but they couldn't use aerial retardant drops, a chemical feature to help tampen down the fires, because some of the structures that were impacted by the fire, like you mentioned, the Grand Canyon Lodge, unfortunately, was burned down, and there's also 50 to 80 other structures that officials say were lost. That includes the visitor center, a gas station, a wastewater treatment, an administrative building, and in that wastewater treatment, officials are concerned about a chlorine gas leak. And so if they were to use those aerial retardant chemicals to help contain the fire more, that could cause a problem with the additional chlorine leak, and that's something that officials are worried about in terms of the chlorine gas impacting visitors or hikers in the region as well. And so that's why hikers were evacuated. That's why some firefighters were evacuated from that region over the weekend, because of the danger to their health with that. And so obviously still a lot to learn in the Grand Canyon. There hasn't been an update from the National Park Service yet this morning, because it is still earlier hours there, but we should be getting an update in terms of what the firefighters are looking to do come the rest of Monday, Liz.
And Maura, firefighters are up against a ton of issues clearly that you just laid out there. Is there any sense of how this is impacting tourism? I know it's still early on, but do we have any sense of that?
Well, as everyone in America, I think, knows, the Grand Canyon is an incredibly popular tourist destination. They receive about 5 million visitors each year. The North Rim side of the park is less frequented, but that's what some people say the magic of the North Rim is, because it's a little bit more peaceful and less trafficked. And so, as you mentioned, that will be closed for the rest of the season. It is open seasonally, and so during its typical shutdown period, that could be when officials could come in and start to restore those areas. But obviously, 50 to 80 structures is something that will take a long time to rebuild, and they're not even having those conversations yet, right? Because they're still fighting the fires. Like I said, hikers were evacuated. Rafters that are coming down the Colorado River that pass through the Grand Canyon are told to bypass the area. It's a popular area where people typically camp, or there's other dormitories in the area, and so there definitely is not space for tourism at this time. I should also note the Grand Canyon is not the only national park at this moment facing a massive wildfire. The Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park in western Colorado is also facing a 6,000-acre almost fire. That's also suspected from lightning over the weekend or late last week, excuse me. And so the Colorado governor had called a state of emergency over the weekend in order to combat that. And air quality emergency is in effect through Monday as well. This is a slightly smaller park, about 400,000 visitors each year, but still just kind of paint a picture of the conditions that firefighters and these national parks are facing given recent weather patterns, Liz.
Yeah, and a lot of extreme weather around the United States this summer that we're following, and I know you've been covering this as well. Scripps News business and tech correspondent Maura Barrett live for us. Thank you.
Scripps News, part of the Scripps News Group. We all know how annoying those bug bites are, but they can also be dangerous if the mosquito is carrying a disease. That's why now researchers at USF are turning to AI to track and treat these dangerous mosquitoes. For one of the researchers on the team, the mission is personal. Researchers at the University of South Florida are taking on a big mission, using artificial intelligence to identify dangerous mosquitoes and prevent disease outbreaks.
You can see the lights.
For PhD student Farhat Azam, this work hits close to home.
Back in 2019, I was affected by dengue.
She's from Bangladesh, where she and her family lived through a deadly outbreak of dengue fever.
It was terrible for all of us in the family because we couldn't be able to stand or walk like for long 14 days. Yeah, I was scared, but not for me, more than like for my parents because they're older.
Luckily, they recovered, but many others didn't, and that's what drives her work. She's part of the team at USF developing a high-tech solution. This trap that uses cameras and AI to spot dangerous mosquitoes.
You can see that through the fan and the light, the mosquitoes will go in and fall into the sticky pads we have here.
Let me show you how this works. Mosquitoes are sucked into this trap and photographed by 2 cameras inside. Those images are then uploaded to the cloud, where AI analyzes them to detect if any are disease-carrying mosquitoes.
So these are the images. So you can see the image here. This is the image from the trap.
If they are dangerous, the system immediately alerts local public health officials. There's even a tool for the public where you can snap a photo of a mosquito and get real-time analysis. Azam thinks this system will play a huge role in preventing the spread of mosquito-borne illness.
It's our responsibility, and also this trap will be fully automated, AI-powered, so it will be very fast.
Right now, the AI system is still in the trial period for Hillsborough County, but those researchers hope to expand it across Florida. Keely McCormick, Scripps News Group.
Right now, NATO Secretary Mark Rutte arriving for a visit with President Trump at the White House. Let's listen in.
To go. And I think Mark will tell you that it was really perhaps more important the date of November 5th. That was the election day. Maybe that was the most important because we've made tremendous progress together. And one of the reasons that you're here today is to hear that we are very unhappy, I am, with Russia. But we'll discuss that maybe a different day. But we're very, very unhappy with them, and we're going to be doing very severe tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. Tariffs at about 100%. You'd call them secondary tariffs. You know what that means. But today we're going to talk about something else. And as you know, we've spent $350 billion approximately on this war with Russia and Ukraine. And we'd like to see it end. It wasn't my war. It was Biden's war. It's not my war. I'm trying to get you out of it. And we want to see it end. And I'm disappointed in President Putin because I thought we would have had a deal 2 months ago, but it doesn't seem to get there. So based on that, we're going to be doing secondary tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. It's very simple. And they'll be at 100%. And that's the way it is. That can be more simple. It's just the way it is. I hope we don't have to do it. But regardless, we are going to be we make the greatest military equipment in the world, whether it's missiles. You saw that recently in Iran, the way those planes flew in. They hit every single, 14 bombs hit every target. Then you had the helicopters shoot a total of 30 bombs, 30 missiles, and they hit every single, Marco, is that right? Every single piece, every single target. And it was, I guess, on a scale of 0 to 10, they say it was about a 15. That's how successful it was. That's how lethal it was, a word they like to use nowadays. But it was an amazing, well-organized attack that people in this country want to do for 24 years. You know, when we had the pilots in last week, they were saying, sir, we've been practicing this for 24 years, meaning people, not them, but other people that are a little older now. But they too, and you were the one that let us do it. but we've been practicing it 3 to 4 times a year for 22, 24 years, because they always knew they had to stop Iran from doing what they were doing, which is trying to come up with a nuclear weapon, a nuclear bomb. And we did it very successfully. And we make the best equipment, the best missiles, the best of everything. The European nations know that. And we've made a deal today, and I'm going to have Mark speak about it, but we've made a deal today where we are going to be sending them weapons and they're going to be paying for them. The United States will not be having any payment made. We're not buying it, but we will manufacture it and they're going to be paying for it. Our last meeting of a month ago was very successful in that they agreed to 5%, which is more than $1 trillion a year, so they have a lot of money. And these are wealthy nations. They have a lot of money, and they want to do it. They feel very strongly about it, and we feel strongly about it, too. But we're in for a lot of money, and we don't want to do anymore, and we can't. But we make the best, and we're going to be sending the best to NATO, and in some cases to maybe, at Mark's suggestion, if we go to Germany, where they're going to send early on missiles, and they'll be replaced, and NATO is going to take care of it. It's going to be coordinated by NATO, and they're going to work very much with Matt Whitaker, who's right here, who's a great ambassador, and Matt's going to be coordinating. You better do a good job, Matt.
I will.
But Matt's going to coordinate. He's a very talented guy. He's going to coordinate everything. So in a nutshell, we're going to make top-of-the-line weapons, and they'll be sent to NATO. NATO may choose to have certain of them sent to other countries where we can get a little additional speed, where the country will release something and it'll be mostly in the form of a replacement. And I'd like to have Mark, and again, just a highly respected, pretty young guy, for having had the career that he's had, because he had an amazing career before going to NATO. So we spent a lot of time together over the last couple of months. And if you could say a few words.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No, Mr. President, dear Donald, this is really big. This is really big. You called me on Thursday that you had taken a decision. And the decision is that you want Ukraine what it needs to have to maintain, to be able to defend itself against Russia. But
You've been listening to President Donald Trump and the NATO Secretary Mark Rutte in the Oval Office there. The NATO Secretary visiting Washington today as the president is making an announcement about American weapons sales to Europe for the Ukrainians to fight against Russia. And President Trump weighing in, too, saying that he is, quote, very, very unhappy with Russia right now. He says he's going to bring very severe tariffs if there's not some kind of peace deal in the next 50 days. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back to this Oval Office meeting.
I'm John Mattery. So many of us would like to help the survivors of those Texas floods, but how do you make sure your donation is really going to the right place? We'll have some things you need to check before you give.
Right now, NATO Secretary Mark Rutte is at the White House for a visit with President Trump. They're there in the Oval Office. Let's listen back into that conversation.
The 5%, but also the decision to keep Ukraine strong and the decision to increase our defense industrial production. So based on that, that was Europe stepping up. This is again Europeans stepping up. So I've been in contact with many countries. I can tell you that at this moment, Germany massively, but also Finland and Denmark and Sweden and Norway, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Canada, they all want to be part of this. And this is only the first wave. There will be more. So what we will do is work through the NATO systems to make sure that we know what Ukrainians need, so that we can make packages. Of course, in a way, we discussed it this morning, as Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon, in a way that, of course, the US will keep on its stockpiles necessary to defend this country. That's absolutely clear. But it will mean that Ukraine can get its hands on really massive numbers of military equipment, both for air defense, but also missiles, ammunition, etc., etc. So if I was Vladimir Putin today and hear you speaking about what you are planning to do in 50 days and this announcement, I would reconsider whether I should not take negotiations about Ukraine more seriously than I was doing at the moment, if I was Vladimir Putin. But when I'm Ukraine, I think this is really great news for them. So I really want to thank you for that. And it means the Europeans paying for it. And again, I mentioned all these countries, we will deal with that. And exactly as you said, that might also mean that countries will move equipment fast into Ukraine and then the US later backfilling it because speed is of the essence here. So really, thank you. This is important.
You did a great job. It's a really great job. We've been very successful in settling wars. You have India, Pakistan, you have Rwanda and the Congo. That was going on for 30 years. India, by the way, and Pakistan would have been a nuclear war within another week, the way that was going. That was going very badly. And we did that through trade. I said, we're not going to talk to you about trade unless you get this thing settled. And they did. And they were both great leaders. And they were great. But Rwanda and the Congo, that was going on for 30 years. And at least 7 million people killed, and killed with a lot of pretty rough weapons like machetes, heads chopped off, going on for many years. You couldn't even get near the countries. Nobody wanted to get near. It's so frightening. And we got that one solved. Serbia, Kosovo, got that solved. That was going to be one that was going to happen. And again, that was something I used. I use trade for a lot of things, but it's great for settling wars. That was really very important. We're working, Marco is working very hard with everybody here on the Strip, the Gaza Strip. I call it the Gaza Strip, one of the worst real estate deals ever made. They gave up the oceanfront property, one of the worst deals ever made. But it was supposed to bring peace, and it didn't bring peace. It brought the opposite. But we're doing pretty well on Gaza. Steve Witkoff is here, and I think we could have something fairly soon to talk about. And we solved other one that we just seem to have, Armenia and Azerbaijan. It looks like that's going to come to a conclusion, successful conclusion. We worked on Egypt with a next-door neighbor who is a good neighbor. They're friends of mine, but they happened to build a dam which closed up water going into a thing called the Nile. I think if I'm Egypt, I want to have water in the Nile, and we're working on that one. It's a problem, but it's going to get solved. They built one of the biggest dams in the world, a little bit outside of Egypt. You know about that. You've been hearing about that one. And that turned out to be a big problem. I don't know. I think the United States funded the dam. I don't know why they didn't solve the problem before they built the dam. But it's nice when the Nile River has water. It's a very important source of income and life. It's the life of Egypt. And to take that away is pretty incredible. But we think we're going to have that solved very quickly. So we do good. The only one we haven't been able to get to yet is Russia. And I'm not happy. And I will tell you that Ukraine wants to do something. Again, it's a war that should have never started. If I were president, it never would have happened. I used to speak to President Putin about it a lot. It was the apple of his eye. But once I saw what was going on, I said, they're gonna have a war here. I was outside. The election was rigged. And I was outside looking in. And I said, you know, that thing's going to be a war. Couldn't believe it, because what Biden said was the exact opposite of what should have been said. And it started, and it's a real mess. We're losing, I guess they're losing 5,000 or 6,000 people a day. It's actually now more. I was saying 5,000 a day. It's actually more now. Mostly soldiers, but a lot of people in cities and towns that are getting blown up too. It's a horrible war, and it should be stopped. And so if it's not done, if we don't have an agreement in 50 days, that's what we're doing. Secondary tariffs, and they're biting. And I hope we don't get to the point where we do, but I've been hearing so much talk. It's all talk. It's all talk, and then missiles go into Kiev and kill 60 people. It's got to stop. It's got to stop. But the purpose of this is to say that this is a very big deal we've made. This is billions of dollars worth of military equipment is going to be purchased from the United States, going to NATO, etc. And that's going to be quickly distributed to the battlefield. Ukraine will take it up. And, you know, say what you want about Ukraine. When the war started, they had no chance. And they still would have had no chance if the equipment they had the best equipment, because we do make the best planes and missiles, and we make the best military equipment in the world by far. And we have new things coming out that are beyond belief, and I'm very excited about the Golden Dome. It's going to give us very strong protection.
You've been listening to President Trump and NATO Secretary Mark Rutte. They're in the Oval Office. They're meeting here in Washington as the United States is poised to sell, as the president said, billions of dollars worth of weapons to NATO to help the Ukrainians in their fight against Russia. President Trump making it very clear that he is not happy with President Putin and the way that the conflict is going there. We'll be right back with more headlines at 11:30. A massive fire overnight at an assisted living facility has taken the lives of 9 people. I'm Scripps News' Liz Landers, and you're watching Morning Rush. It happened in Fall River, Massachusetts. The details of the fire are harrowing. At least 30 people were injured in the blaze. There were reports of people hanging out of windows and screaming for help. 70 people live in the facility. The fire was extinguished by this morning, and at this hour, the exact cause is still under investigation. Bitcoin crossed the $120,000 level for the first time today, marking a milestone for the world's largest cryptocurrency. This comes as the House of Representatives prepares to debate a series of bills later this week to regulate it. President Trump, who has called himself the crypto president, has urged policymakers to revamp rules in favor of the industry. Buckingham Palace has confirmed that President Trump and his wife Melania will meet with King Charles in September. The king will host the president at Windsor Castle between September 17th and 19th. A formal invitation was sent in June, but the two leaders were unable to meet during the summer because of scheduling conflicts. The president and the First Lady previously visited the United Kingdom in 2019 and held talks with Queen Elizabeth. It's been 1 year since someone attempted to assassinate President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. And Senator Rand Paul says he believes the public, quote, may never know what prompted that 20-year-old gunman. Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller is live in New York with the latest on this report. Alex, this report is about accountability, or according to Senator Rand Paul, who authored it, the lack thereof. What are you learning from this report?
Well, the finger pointing continues. They can't even get on the same page about who was supposed to be watching the building that the shooter was able to climb on top of. Remember, there were multiple agencies in charge, but when you look specifically at the Secret Service, there are various accounts of who was supposed to be in charge of looking after that particular building that day. And even more than that, Liz, the shooter was on top of the building for a couple of minutes before he began firing. He was known to the Secret Service from just being around the perimeter that day, and nobody has really taken accountability of who was supposed to be following up after they already knew that he was near the property. Now, just a couple of days after the shooting, the then Secret Service Director, Kimberly Cheadle, she was testifying before Congress under oath. She said that there were no requests for extra assets for this particular day. According to Senator Paul, that was not the case. He says that at least 4 requests had been made. Now, there were counter snipers on the roofs there. I remember when I was there, I was able to see them in the building directly behind, or on top of the building rather, directly behind the stage. But that wasn't the norm, according to this report, for these rallies that we see Trump having all of the time. In fact, according to this report, there had been requests made for them earlier in the year, but they had never been granted until this day. He was asked, Senator Paul, about this and how there still is no accountability being taken. Listen to what he said.
I think it was a cultural cover-up for the agency. They did not want to assess blame. They did not want to look internally, and they wanted to discount any of their actions that might have led to this. This was a cover-your-ass sort of moment, and I do believe that they did know. There's no way that the Director of Secret Service, that she did not know that these requests had been made. And so, yes, it was a huge failure.
And since then, Senator Paul says the accountability is lacking still, that there have only been 6 people within the Secret Service disciplined for what happened on July 13th, only two of them getting lighter kind of punishments. Paul's saying that he had to subpoena the Secret Service to even find out what those disciplinary records look like. He said he didn't want to name names, but he wanted to know if anybody had been disciplined, and that some of those 6 people were only disciplined within the last 2 weeks after that subpoena was sent. So really just a scathing report there from Senator Paul about the lack of accountability that we're seeing still being taken 1 year later after this incident occurred. Still many officers saying that it wasn't their responsibility to phone in the things that they were seeing on the ground. So we know that the president has said that he has confidence in his Secret Service, but still really difficult read when you're talking about protecting the president.
Yeah, and it's an agency, too, that has been plagued by issues for years. Alex, you mentioned this earlier, but you were on the ground there that day as all of this unfolded. Walk us through how security was handled for people there, specifically as the shooting happened.
You know, it seemed like any other rally in terms of security. They had metal detectors. People were being herded through them. They were being wanded down. And we know that the shooter was around that area before he climbed up onto that roof. They did put these people through metal detectors. But this was one of the largest rallies that I'd ever seen, particularly one outside. It was incredibly hot. People were fainting right and left as we waited under the hot sun because this was a rally that took place in the early evening. But people had been there all day long waiting to get inside. When this shooting happened, it ended very quickly. We obviously know that the shooter was shot almost immediately, but in terms of what happened on the ground, everybody ducked very quickly. And then from what I remember is almost, you know, not immediately, but within a couple of minutes, people were able to go back to their cars. Secret Service, you know, safely ushering people out. But when you take a step back and think about the fact that they didn't report this guy through the proper channels, that there really wasn't knowledge of if there could have been a second shooter. So when you really think about how it unfolded, thankfully everybody was okay. But I think often about the fact that there wasn't this mass panic, but that there could have been this mass panic and people kind of running everywhere. Particularly, there were a lot of elderly people there. It really could have been a lot more of a mess than it ended up being. But Secret Service did usher people out very safely. But still, it is kind of scary when you think about really what happened and the lack of, you know, communication that was really unfolding on the ground there.
Yeah, so scary what happened that day. Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller live for us in New York with that report. Thank you, Alex. And let's get back now to the White House, where NATO Secretary Mark Rutte, you see him right there, he's visiting President Trump in the Oval Office. Let's take a listen in as they take some questions.
And then you're really talking about big numbers. Take Germany visiting today. They're really talking about big numbers.
Can you get some clarity?
I will say that I spoke with Germany, spoke with most of the larger countries. And they are really enthusiastic about this. They want to, and you know, they're willing to go very far. I will tell you, you know, as per your question, how far would I go? They want to go very far. They don't want this to happen. That's why I think from Putin's standpoint, it would really be good. He gets the country's economy is doing very poorly, and he's got to get his economy back. He's got to save his economy. He could save his country in a sense, but the economy can destroyed a lot of countries over the years. He wants to get that economy back. And, you know, he's got a great country for trading and other things. If they could use the assets instead of war, he's got some tremendous potential. That's what I would say.
How did you deliver this news to Putin, sir?
Say?
How did you tell Putin this was coming?
I speak to him a lot about getting this thing done. And I always hang up and say, well, that was a nice phone call. And then missiles are launched into Kiev or some other city. And I said, it's strange. And after that happens 3 or 4 times, you say, the talk doesn't mean anything. My conversations with him are always very pleasant. They say, isn't that a very lovely conversation? And then the missiles go off that night. I go home, I tell the First Lady, you know, I spoke to Vladimir today. We had a wonderful conversation. She said, oh, really? Another city was just hit. So it's like, look, he's... I don't want to say he's an assassin, but he's a tough guy. It's been proven over the years. He's fooled a lot of people. He fooled Bush. He fooled a lot of people. He fooled Clinton, Bush, Obama, Biden. He didn't fool me. But what I do say is that at a certain point, you know, ultimately talk doesn't talk. It's got to be action. It's got to be results. And I hope he does it. It's potentially such a great country to be wasting so many people on this and the money. And look at what's happened to his economy. Look at what's happened. So,
and with the threat in 50 days, the economy will be hit very hard.
I mean, look, I hope he's going to do it. He knows the deal. He knows what a fair deal is. If there is such a thing as a fair deal, there's no winners here. This is a loser. This is a loser. And I dealt with him from the beginning. It wouldn't have happened, but I will say Ukraine was the apple of his eye. We talked about it. It was the apple of his eye, but it wasn't going to happen. And he understood that. It wasn't going to happen. And then I noticed, after I was out, I noticed soldiers forming at the border. And then I heard horrible, stupid things being said from the other side. And I said, they're really handling it very, very wrong. It's a shame. Yeah.
Can I add one thing, and that is about President Trump, because you came in office in January. On the 12th of February, you had your first phone call with Putin. I think you did exactly what I hoped you would do. That is breaking the deadlock, starting the conversation, because you have to test him. I know Putin very well from the days when I was Prime Minister. In the Netherlands, you have to test him. And you did this, and you really gave him a chance to be serious, to get to the table, to start negotiations. Steve Witkoff, Marco Rubio, we all try to help you. But you've now come to a point where you say, well, hey...
We actually thought we had probably 4 times the deal.
Yeah.
I mean, you would have called and we said, this looks good.
Yeah.
And then the deal wouldn't happen because bombs would be thrown out that night and you'd say, we're not making any deals. It was like...
But you making the deadlock was crucial because you had to start that process, and you were the only one who was able to do that.
I think we'll get it done.
Do you think he's reasonable enough to negotiate an end to this?
We're going to get it done. I think, look, this is a very powerful situation. You have very wealthy countries buying the best equipment in the world. And we have the best equipment in the world. We make equipment like no other. You know, our submarines, nuclear submarines, are so powerful.
You've been listening to President Trump there. He's meeting in the Oval Office with NATO Secretary Mark Rutte. They are talking about a weapons purchase that NATO is making to help the Ukrainians. We're going to take a break and we will come back to this on the other side. We're going to take you back to the White House, where President Trump is meeting with NATO Secretary Mark Rutte. They are taking questions from reporters. We're going to listen back into that.
The economy is very strong, even though we have a Fed person who's terrible. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing, but that's all right. We blow through interest rates. We're doing so well, we blow through it. Be nice, because people would be able to buy housing a lot easier. But think of it. We thought your country was dead. And they were dealing with China, because they were really going to China, but not anymore. But we thought your country was dead, and now you have the hottest country anywhere in the world. So we've done a really good job, and it's an honor to have this man. This man is a star, and he's going to be dealing with another one of my stars, Matt, and you're going to do a great job, Matt Whitaker, okay? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. 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 Thank you.
Thank you very much.
President Donald Trump is promising a, quote, major announcement involving Russia this week, perhaps as early as today. So what might it be, and how may it impact the conflict between Russia and Ukraine?
I am very disappointed with President Putin. And I thought he was somebody that meant what he said, and he'll talk so beautifully, and then he'll bomb people at night. We don't like that.
Sunday night, President Trump once again criticized Russian President Vladimir Putin over the conflict in Ukraine, a sharp departure from the manner in which President Trump would talk about the Russian leader earlier this year. This week, President Trump is expected to meet with the Secretary of NATO in Washington. And on Sunday, President Trump announced the U.S. would soon be giving Patriot missiles to Ukraine to help fight off Russia. The conflict in Eastern Europe has intensified in recent weeks. The United Nations reports that June saw the worst casualties in Ukraine in nearly 3 years. On Capitol Hill this week, lawmakers continue to wait and see if President Trump will endorse a bipartisan plan to sanction Russia. One idea includes using frozen Russian assets to help Ukraine buy military equipment. Another idea here on Capitol Hill is to penalize countries that are buying Russian energy, although that is a slippery slope because that could potentially mean harming some allies of the United States. Joe St. George, Scripps News Group, Washington.
Democratic lawmakers drove through that gate today to take a tour of Alligator Alcatraz, and when they were done, they told us that they saw detainees living in some of the worst conditions they've ever seen. Before heading into the detention center,
this is a stunt.
This is effing ridiculous.
Democratic leaders were already anticipating a lackluster tour
That we expect will show us little to nothing.
Saying it is a staged, scripted, and sanitized version, as they were denied entry last week when attempting an unannounced visit to Alligator Alcatraz.
When the state found out about our unannounced visit, they issued this official invitation because they knew they had cleaning up to do.
A lawsuit has been filed due to Democrats being turned away, stating the action is against the Florida statute.
We don't need permission to come to this facility.
But when pushed by WPTV's Tyler Hatfield the day before the visit,
Governor DeSantis, do you have a comment about Florida Democrats filing a lawsuit?
Governor Ron DeSantis says the lawsuit is unjust, stating the tour invite came the day before the filing.
This is a ridiculous lawsuit. They should be sanctioned by the court for abusing the legal system.
Passing a group of protesters, Democratic leaders were able to head inside and said they would be analyzing the conditions, as detainees have been reporting bugs in their food, an infestation of mosquitoes, plumbing not working, and inadequate medical care. Alleged conditions DeSantis has little sympathy for.
This is not the Four Seasons. What's the plumbing going to be like in their home country? What are the bugs going to be like in their home country? Give me a break on some of this stuff.
3 groups of lawmakers each took their own tour and could not bring electronics in with them. Afterwards, they shared their experience.
We saw humans being held in cages, 32 people per cage, 3 toilets in each cage for these 32 people, and their drinking water comes from the toilet.
I mean, there are really disturbing, vile conditions.
However, DeSantis says the center is being ran professionally and took a jab at Democrats fighting against the facility.
Democrats care more about illegal aliens than they do about American citizens. I've never seen these Democrats fight this hard for the people of Florida. I've never seen them fight this hard for U.S. citizens.
But for Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she says,
this place needs to be shut the hell down. It needs to be shut down.
Now, clearly, Democratic lawmakers were not satisfied with this tour. They say that they plan to come back here again, unannounced, for another one. At Alligator Alcatraz, I'm Kayla McDermott.
watching Scripps News, part of the Scripps News Group.
I'm Madison Myers reporting in your neighborhood of Crawford as families across Central Texas continue to recover from the devastating flooding in Kerr County. I spoke to one family who has deep ties to Camp Mystic. They shared stories and memories to a place that brought them joy.
Camp Mystic Cypress Lake, and it almost looks like it's raining in the back, kind of. And then the beautiful green grass and the American flag and the sun shining.
As our neighbors continue to recover from the devastating flooding in Kerr County, one Crawford girl is holding on to memories of a place she loves, Camp Mystic, a place she left just 3 weeks ago.
My parents saw it on Facebook and Instagram, and then they told me, and then I was like going through it, and it was really sad. It hit home for sure, knowing that I was just there. But yeah, and then knowing that like such a beautiful place just got destroyed and stuff.
This summer was 14-year-old Tinley Nystrom's third year at Camp Mystic. She sat down with me to share memories from a place she'll never forget.
And it's basically a charm bracelet. Every girl at camp has one. And then this one I got this year, and it's basically just a Camp Mystic trunk, and it has my name on it and then my phone number just in case it gets lost.
Tinley tells me the last time she was at camp felt a little different.
I definitely think it's a God thing, because last time when I was just there, I was really anxious. I was going and I was really homesick and stuff, but just some of the counselors and stuff and Mr. and Mrs. Eastland were so welcoming and nice to me, and that's what made me want to stay, and I'm so glad I got to spend that year.
Camp Mystics director Dick Eastland, along with 20 others, died in the floods. Tinley remembers him not just as a leader, but a hero.
They gave me this letter, and it's basically saying, like, thank you for singing and stuff. It feels good knowing that I have a part of him, and, like, he's the one who taught me to, like, fish and all that stuff, and it's so much, like, it's really sad to me knowing that he passed away, but he went up and carried girls with him.
Remembering the lessons he's taught her.
And now, like, every time I reel one it, it's like I did this for him and stuff, so.
Holding on to the memories.
These things mean even more to you. Yeah, a lot. Like, I feel like when I look at each chart, like, a lot of memories go back, and yeah.
And leaning on her faith for the future.
Well, I just know that God does really great things, and it's just like such a great camp, and I just know that we're going to come back strong, and we're going to grow from this, and it's all going to be better.
Madison Myers, Scripps News Group.